Hi, my name is Miguel, and I did my case study on poverty and pollution, which is case study 7.5. Some of the facts of the cases are in regards to Brazil's Valley of Death, which is known for being one of the most polluted places on Earth. It currently has more than 100,000 residents that inhabit it, and is actually home to numerous industrial plants that contribute to the release of large amounts of pollutants into the air. These pollutants cause harm to the environment and the inhabitants, unfortunately. It's said to be that the air is actually heavily contaminated with toxins, leading to health issues such as respiratory issues, diseases, and high infant mortality rates as well. Some of the inhabitants argue that the pollution is the price of progress. People have highlighted that disproportionate impact of the poor and the environmental impact. The corporate idea of relocating polluting industries, unfortunately, to less developed countries with lower wages has been challenged by economists recently, but it does face many oppositions from those who prioritize environmental sustainability and groups who also challenge labor policies and ethical manufacturing practices. We have faced several ethical issues on an individual level. One of these examples is actually from Lawrence Summers, who's actually the former director of the National Economics Council. He's actually faced a lot of ethical criticism for his beliefs on the relocation of polluting companies to pretty much third world countries or cities that are actually not economically thriving or don't have a sustainable GDP. His approach disregards the well-being and health of individuals in the community. He suggests that the lives and health of lesser value, their lives and health is of lesser value than those who are actually in economically sustained communities. He's actually proposed to shift polluting to underpolluted regions in Africa. He sees this as an open ground for countries that have not contributed to pollution. He tries to prioritize economic success over pretty much the environmental footprint. His perspective overlooks the consequences of pollution, but his perspective also fails to recognize the intrinsic value of life and the importance of his impact. So he's pretty susceptible to his visions, but that's the reason why he's also heavily criticized. He can't seem to find the balance between environmental stewardship and economic growth. He really does lack the stewardship. So, unfortunately, that's why he has been heavily criticized on an individual level, right? But that's not it. We also face issues on an organizational level, right? Corporations have actually been strategically relocating polluting and emitting industries to impoverished regions, such as like Africa, just like Summers mentioned earlier. Due to the cost advantages and federal leniencies, right? There have been federal leniencies. Governments haven't really regulated a lot of the good manufacturing practices. And therefore, there's a lot of industries that have actually been moving to places like the Valley of Death, because of the laid back leniencies and the regulations, these companies get to kind of get away with a lot, which actually translate into savings, right, for manufacturing. Pretty much the acceptance of the environmental polluting industries has actually been skewed by economic relief of these third world places. The inhabitants of cities such as the Valley of Death, right, have actually lost the ability to sustain themselves economically, causing them to pretty much choose between their health and their socioeconomic prosperity. But on a social level, right, some of the residents unfortunately prioritize job opportunities because they prioritize these companies coming into their cities because they present job opportunities, right? But the sad part is that their choices are often very limited due to their financial limitations, right? I believe that it is essential to first address these economic restraints and issues that contribute to their community's poverty, such as maybe obtaining adequate access to resources, providing more job opportunities, or the government giving them a little bit more help, right, towards healthcare and transportation, so that they don't actually have to feel forced or have a forced hand to allow these industries to come into their communities and pollute them, just because it may pose in some kind of job opportunities. I also included some rule-based theories of ethics into my case study. One of them is rule utilitarianism, right? I believe that by improving the suppressing conditions of the residents, the well-being and their overall happiness could be improved, right? While the socioeconomic beliefs of the industrial migration is, although it is valued, right, to the working class, it does pose long-term consequences, because of the degradation of the environment and pollution. It also does pose health problems, which actually should be considered, because it does affect them long-term. But unfortunately, because of what's going on, right, the working class have actually acted independently, right, which we actually start to get into more of act utilitarianism, because we start to shift our focus, right, on why certain individuals have abandoned, right, their social and ethical belief, which is based on a community, based on their social prosperity as inhabitants, as they're coexisting, right, in this entire ecosystem as a family, as a community. They've kind of abandoned that, to try to make ethical decisions for themselves, right? So this act of utilitarianism has actually interfered with their rule-based theory of ethics, unfortunately. And because they're viewing things from their perspective, right, it's actually skewed and just distorted pretty much everything that the society has actually tried to ethically build, unfortunately, right? And that's actually when we get into consequence-based theory of ethics, right? Environmental theory of ethics, right, is what I've actually focused my theory on, which is from an environmental perspective, right? I believe that it's important that the inhabitants of the Valley of Death, try to reach some kind of balance, right? Some kind of economic constraints, or address some of the issues faced by the economic issues that they're experiencing, which is not allowing them to thrive, right? I believe that efforts should be made to find kind of sustainable solutions that address both economic and environmental concerns, not only for themselves, but for their children and future generations. I believe that if they created alliances, right, if they did peaceful protesting, and maybe if they were encouraged, to do a little bit more, be more proactive towards the solutions, uh, and also if they also, instead of like just letting industries come into their cities, right, maybe say, hey, if you're going to come into our city, we hope that you can contribute to transportation, infrastructure, or try to help to alleviate some of the economic and environmental impacts that they actually will cause in the future due to their transition into the Valley of Death. I believe that by applying the consequence-based theory of ethics into my case study, would actually encourage inhabitants to become more aware of their health and the environmental impact or carbon footprint. I believe that if we educated and brought awareness to the importance of the preservation of the environment, not only for themselves but for their offsprings, right, their children, I think it would encourage significant changes that would not only improve the environment but the overall social economic sustainability as a community, as a collective. And then some of the rule-based outcomes, I believe, is that if we apply our rules-based theory of utilitarianism to discourage individuals from thinking individually, right, independently, because that's unfortunately what's going on, right? And we try to teach these individuals and educate them that an understanding of socialism, or to have a social understanding of how individuals' ideas or how their ideas can actually affect the community, educating them would actually kind of reduce the amount of tension to make decisions, right? At least better decisions as whole, because you're not acting independently anymore, right? You're acting as a community. Unfortunately, they do see opportunity, and they don't stop to consider. But I believe that if individuals who participated in the success of the industries at least demand some kind of stricter policies that could be put in place, at least educate them a little bit more so that they're not making individualized act utilitarianism decisions on their own and think more collectively as a community. Some of the potential solutions that I see what's going on here is that I believe that there are methods that can be ethically balanced, right? There are methods that we can implement into the Valley of Death. Well, no longer consider the Valley of Death, right? But there are some methods that I think that we can actually ethically implement that can, bring some balance to the environment and economical concerns. One of the solutions is to transition into cleaner methods of manufacturing and operating. That's actually one of the biggest reasons why they're actually known as the Valley of Death, is because a lot of these industries are coming in here and, they're using foul play, right? They're not properly filtering the air, they're not properly filtering the water that they're releasing into the oceans or into the atmosphere, right? Another thing that I think would be really good that we implemented, or a potential solution, would be to improve the infrastructure. I believe that if we improve the infrastructure, it's not only going to allow these cities to kind of be held to go work in one of these industries solemnly, right? They have the opportunity to go into the city and maybe look for other opportunity or other jobs, Um, and then another solution I think would be a potential solution would be bringing in a little bit more education and social development as far as skills and in the working class as well. I believe that these issues can address the economic and environmental restraints that they face, right? Because if we start to educate the community more about the environment, about the impact of the environment, and their socioeconomic impact, I believe that the community can start actually making more sound-based decisions on who they let into their cities and what kind of practices they allow their cities to pretty much operate into their city. Um, but that is kind of a long stretch, right? Because if we're thinking of that, we actually also have to overcome negative feedback, which certain solutions kind of don't bode well with everybody, right? The reason why they're actually in that place is because they've acted individually. So certain solutions do prioritize long-term transformations rather than immediate ones, unfortunately. So based on the case study, the community appears to be primarily motivated by instant gratification, right? Hence, allowing these industries to come into their cities, right, in exchange for jobs, instant gratification, pretty much rendering them oblivious to the impact of long-term changes in the environment or in their communities. Regrettably, right, due to their foggy mindset, endeavors aimed at long-term solutions like education and ecosystems might actually discourage some of these individuals from making any impact or any change, right? So alternatively, directing their attention and initiatives to something that yields solutions with instant gratification would be probably a better way, a better trajectory, right, to kind of guide these individuals or the inhabitants for change, right? So one of those is infrastructure, just like we recently discussed, transportation and education, right? A lot of these solutions can be instant gratifying, right? Where if we have industries that are contributing to our infrastructure, our education, right? It poses more of an instant gratification versus, going to plant a tree, right? It's more likely that the inhabitants in the Valley of Death are going to pursue education over planting a tree because they're not going to receive the instant gratification, which again is an initial reason why they are in the place that they are, because of that. So because if they led to that predicament, right, I believe that if we implement these solutions, right, and we try to overcome the feedback, I believe that ethically we can make some changes to the community, and overall, I do believe that we can make an impact. Thank you for your time.